Now, if we look at the survivorship curve, we're going to show this to you. We're going to show this to you and have a look at what the curve means. So when they do give it to you, the chances are that they're going to put this in an exam paper. Your examiners must, because HIV/AIDS is so topical and so important at this stage of our lives.
Yes.
So you are bound to get something like this, whether it's in graph form, whether it's in data response. So let's have a look. Okay, people, here is the survivorship graph. This is your lifespan in years, and this is the number surviving per 1,000. So this could be anything, but let's look at people and say, right, in our third world countries, and I'm going to start with third world first because it's the one we can all sort of think about logically. You're going to have a country where of 1,000 people that are born, very few people are going to make it to old age. So this would actually be a million, but we'll work on the 1,000 here. So most of the people would die by the time they're 24, 25. Where your medical services and things are not that good. People aren't getting proper medication. Clinics are not up and running. Food and water is bad. They don't have proper hygiene and flowing, toilet sewage works and things like that. So the people get cholera and all kinds of outbreaks. So that would be, and also starving and war. Civil war causes a lot of deaths as well. So that's your third world countries. Then here you'd have your first world countries. So here we're looking at Denmark, Sweden, Switzerland, Germany. All right, those are your first world countries where a lot of education, a lot of good medical centers to look after people, that kind of thing. Australia as well. Australia is amazing what they do for their people. So those would be your first world countries. And then your second world countries are the guys that sort of fall in between. So here, of the people that are born, they sort of die and born and die and born, and it sort of ends up with quite a number making it to old age. You end up with about a quarter of the population will make it to 75 and everybody's happy.
Now, as we discuss the survivorship curves, remember agricultural, medical and economic developments need to be very vast and advanced so that the population can survive. But as population increases, we find natural resources such as food, water and space becomes a problem. So what happens? Competition comes about within the population, and this brings about environmental results, and a high death rate comes about.
Now people, remember, we're talking about animals and humans. Try to separate the two, because with population studies, you've got a slightly different criteria when you talk about humans versus talking about animals. I mean, people aren't going to start fighting each other in the street because they want a sandwich, or they want to eat a plant, whereas animals will. And when animals do start fighting for their environment, for their piece of ground, which we're going to cover later on with territoriality, they're fighting for their space. And I suppose we do to a certain degree as well as humans. Then if we look at poverty and hunger, that is a direct result of overcrowding, a lack of hygienic conditions, and you have an incredible rate of spread of infectious diseases because people are living on top of each other. They don't have space, they don't have shelter, they don't have water, and they don't have food. And when that happens, you end up with a whole lot of issues happening there. Now, only people can have poverty and hunger, not animals. Okay, animals can't be poor. They live in the veldt. They're quite happy.
Okay, and then finally we look at the mortality rate increasing when the size of the population exceeds the food supply. You've got very little food, so what happens? People are going to die. Starvation is going to come about. Now remember carrying capacity, we spoke about that. So you've exceeded carrying capacity. The environments now start resisting and the food supply becomes less, and then mortality rate increases.
Farida, also remember that with regard to carrying capacity and environmental resistance, it also applies to animals, where if we had animals tramping down one area because they're enclosed in that area, they're going to destroy their own food because they're not giving the food a chance to grow. And the carrying capacity will decrease because of environmental resistance. People, you must understand the difference between carrying capacity and environmental resistance. As you have more and more environmental resistance, so the carrying capacity will decrease. Okay, if we look at the survival rates are improved by using agriculture, medical and economic developments. This is very, very, very important. You increase food supply, you have proper housing, good sanitation and clean water supplies. That's what they have in their first world, in the first world countries, in Sweden, America, etc. Most of the people have food, they have proper housing, they have sewage works and pipes and water and flowing water. Not to say that they don't have areas that are shocking, but remember, the movies that you see, the American movies and the English movies, you only see the good parts. You don't really see the bad parts. We're talking about the Harlems and that kind of thing. We don't see in movies. All right, then
we find infectious diseases get reduced. How? Because of use of vaccines, modern drugs and proper education, improved primary health care comes about, and these are the countries that have that, and therefore infectious disease will reduce. Pesticides are used correctly so that soil erosion is reduced. They educate farmers, so they bring about rotational crop feeding so that the soil does not erode. Okay?
You have economic growth. Then clearly any economic growth means that your natality rate decreases. Why? Because the more prosperous people become, the more educated they are, and you're not going to have one person having 20 children. You know, we are only supposed to replace what we are. Now, I mean, I've actually messed that one up already because I've got 3 kids. But I mean, I ended up with twins the second time round, so there was no choice in that. But generally, people are supposed to replace what they are. So the man and the woman, and when they pass away, they've replaced themselves with two organisms. Then we'll have no growth. Okay, but if we have too many and you have 10 or 15 children and you can't feed them, you then have poverty kicking in as well.
Yeah, then obviously this brings about education and career focus. So that job creation is brought about, birth control is placed, and sex education. Now I want to talk about China. Remember, in China, there was a law that every couple has 1 child.
It's not still in place?
It's still in place, and if they have the 1 child, they get a grant and they get education facilities for their child. So obviously every parent then just want the 1 child and the child gets good education. If they want 2 children, they then have to pay to the government. And obviously that becomes a problem now. They would have to be...
Huge tax. It's it's huge tax that they have to
pay. It's only the very wealthy ones that could do that. Yeah. And that brought their population to a proper carrying capacity, in other words.
They have negative growth. Well, I don't know how they can call it negative, but it's termed negative growth. Their population is actually decreased because of that. Okay, people, now we're going on to social behavior. And although a lot of this makes a lot of sense, you also have done it since, I think, grade 3. It's like the Great Trek. You know, in the old days, they used to repeat the Great Trek over and over and over again. Here we do animal behavior and pollution over and over and over again ad nauseum. But here we go. Ecosystems consist of both biotic and abiotic factors. I think Farida and I have done this also so many times now. Relationships between the biotic and the abiotic factors determines the social behavior. So if we look at plants, what have we got? Plants need sunlight to photosynthesize. They in turn produce food which the carnivores are going to eat. The plants also absorb nutrients from the soil, so everybody's happy. They give carbon dioxide, use the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and give oxygen. So everybody's happy, and the food they make during photosynthesis gets stored in their body, and along comes a herbivore and goes nosh, 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 nosh. So the energy from the sun goes into the plant, and from the plant it goes into the herbivore, which is your primary consumer. So if we look back to our slide here, it tells you plants photosynthesize, they absorb the nutrients, the mineral salts in the water, and they put it into their bodies. They use the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, otherwise we'll all die, and they use the organic food substances, and they store the excess in their bodies, so everybody's happy.
Learning Channel offers an extensive educational collection ranging from grades 8 to 12 in alignment with the National Curriculum Statement. We offer DVD and workbook sets in a number of different subjects. To buy the Learning Channel series, check out our website on www.learn.co.za or call us on 011 639 0179.